thanks to everybody for coming. It's really nice that you could join us on our first AjoiA Connects. This is a new path for Andrew and I, and something that we're going to try out tonight, and we're really happy that we could be joined by Chris and Debbie from YogaTherapies, who we're going to be doing an event with on the 13th and 14th of May. Called Sound Ceremony and Celebration, which is going to be a weekend event where it's kind of says what it does. It does what it says on the tin. It's going to be sound ceremony and celebration, funnily enough. So we thought we would start off today with our first topic, which is AjoiA Connects with our nervous system. And at this point, I'm going to hand straight over to Andrew and let him take it from here. So I can see that everyone has muted, which is great. And Andrew's over to you.
Good evening, everybody. And if you're watching it on the playback, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it may be. As Anthony just said, it's wonderful to sort of be a pioneer in this new venture, YogaTherapies. Chris and Debbie. Again, the event is May the 13th and 14th, and it's up in Oosburn, which is Newcastle, for all you Southerners and upper Northerners, and wherever you may be watching it from. So Oosburn, Newcastle, May 13th and 14th. So yes, the subject matter is connect to the nervous system. It was chose because the nervous system is everything that we are. We are the nervous system. The nervous system is us, I believe. And yet we know very little about it. We can pay it very little attention, if any. But it fundamentally, profoundly affects us, is us. Our sight, our taste, our vision, our touch, our smell. It's a nervous system. Everything that flows into our being and how we react to it or non-react to it is via our nervous system. How we are in a crowd, how we are when we're alone, how we are when we face life and death. Is all through our nervous system. It's profound, and yet we rarely think about it, or maybe we do. Some of us do. Some of us maybe think about it a lot. And so it was, let's meet our nervous systems. Let's discover it. And this is purposely not a scientific heavy academic-led talk on the nervous system. One, because I wouldn't be able to do it at that level. And two, because it wouldn't suit us. We just want to meet. It's like meeting someone somewhere who interests you. You've never met them before. And it's like, we've got some things in common, and I'd like to find out a bit more about you in a gentle and soft way. So that's our intention this evening. And so we will do something before we fully begin to really meet our nervous systems bodily. But before that, I'm going to let Chris and Debbie maybe say a few words about who they are and what they are.
So Debbie and I run a yoga studio up in Newcastle. And amidst everything really that we run, what we really want to do is equip people with the tools to understand how they exist and interact within themselves, and how that then begins to reflect more broadly in their lives and their communities. So we work with movement, we work with meditation, we work with some quite sciencey trainings. But what we're really interested in is in being able to convey an immediate and embodied, immediately realizable sense of what it is to get in touch with those things. Because like you were saying, it is almost like meeting an old friend. There's so much that you know, and yet there's so much that you don't know. And so whilst you will have all absolutely had moments where you did feel that clarity of connection with yourself, you were clear about what that internal conversation, what those kind of wriggling sensations meant, there will have been plenty of times where actually that conversation kind of bemused you. So perhaps it is like meeting a sort of an old best friend that you've got years and years of catching up to do. All of the stuff that got pushed to one side while you were too busy at work, or whilst the kids were manic and you just had to put things to one side, or during the pandemic where everyone's nervous systems got fried a little bit.
But it's safe to say that our nervous system is always recording everything. So the entire time we're going through our daily business, our daily life, troubles, strife, stresses, it's just recording in the background and taking all of the information from what is occurring throughout that time and storing it, which is then creating new pathways. So it's something that I think bringing to our attention and being aware of, it's time. It's time.
Thank you both. And so the nervous system is in the body. The nervous system is the body. The nervous system is the mind. It's all of us, as I said. So maybe a gentle way of meeting our nervous system is to be with it. And so I call this, what I'm offering that we all do for a few minutes, I call this feet, seat, and breath. And it's purposely offered to be done within a seat. And so whether we're, at work, around the dinner table, on our own, on a train, anywhere where we're seated, and maybe things are a little bit on top, whether it's with the people you're with, the environment, your thoughts, whatever that may be. It's an opportunity to have an option to not battle the thoughts, not try and fight them to be silent, but the option is to move somewhere else, and the somewhere else is ourselves, if that's possible, if we feel safe enough to be around ourselves. And so the option for those who would like to, and again, this is going to be just a few minutes, just to maybe sense where we are with our nervous systems. And the offer is just to sense where one's feet are. And it may sound bizarre, but just to maybe realize that they're there. Parts of our body we can take so much for granted. Our feet that support us and take us, most of us, where we need to go. And to sense how they feel. And what are they in? Slippers, socks, barefoot? What's the connection? Is it carpet, wooden floor, concrete? Just to sense how that feels. And then you can move your toes and your heels really gently, really softly. And to sense the position of your legs, if they're okay. And then to consider the parts of your body that are connecting to the chair that you're in. And like most human bodies, the chair has feet and legs and arms and a seat and a back and a head rest. And its whole intention that the chair was created is to offer support and holding and comfort. And again, to sense what parts of your body are in contact with the chair. And that the chair, the back of the chair literally has your back. The arms softly and gently around you. The seat is underneath you, holding you, comforting. And to notice your breath. Nothing to necessarily change, just to notice your breath. That you can breathe, that your breath is available to you. And potentially there's stillness. There may be some sensations felt, buzzing, fizzing, softness, memories. Your eyes may be closed. Here's your nervous system. Maybe this time being still in a way it isn't usually. Maybe. So this can be the beginning. Through your feet, your back, your body. It's always there. So at any moment, the invitation is for feet, seat and breath, and to meet your nervous system. So when you're ready, you can just gently start to blink your eyes to open. And you've probably been in the room that you're in many, many times, but just to gently, slowly look around the room that you're in. And again, this is all nervous system. Here I am. Oh, I'm noticing this room. I'm noticing the doors. I'm noticing the windows. I'm taking my time. This is your parasympathetic, your rest and digest, potentially. Rather than the speed that we need to be at a lot. Mobile phones and emails and families and jobs. So, welcome to your nervous system, if you haven't met it before. And so, my nervous system, my experience with my nervous system has changed dramatically. And like we spoke earlier, it's like a friend, it's like a companion, and different relationships at different times in our lives and different ages, and different speeds and momentums and needs and extreme ways of living cause our nervous system to be extreme. And for much of my life, my nervous system internally, which manifested it externally in me, was going, ah. But I didn't hear that. I just acted accordingly. Ah. Ah. Hence, I was a percussionist. I couldn't even sit down. and play that drum kit, I had to stand and jump and leap and hardly slept and lived a very extreme life in all the ways you can probably imagine, and some you don't need to imagine, but it was an extreme life. So much so that I ended up in therapy, receiving therapy. And from the benefits of the therapy, particularly the body therapy, that I just happened to stumble into, the more trauma that I first realized I even had, and then along the years connected it that I would offer our bodies can be and are a storehouse for trauma. And our mind, bless its heart, because it's all there, always trying to protect us. And so it's constantly sieving. What do we need to keep in here so that we can move forward? And so events, challenges, and difficulties, and traumas, and people and events, it's sieving. No, we don't need that here. Don't think about that. Don't think about her. Don't think about that experience. Don't think about them. But it can't get rid of it. And so the mind, in my opinion, treats the body like a shed or an attic. It's all that stuff that it doesn't really need, but it doesn't take it down the dump. And it kind of ends up, well, it's sort of below there. So our eyes can ache, our ears can ache, our teeth, our jaw, neck, backache, IBS, eczema, asthma, gout, ankles, knees, insomnia. In my opinion, so much of these diseases, afflictions are down to the nervous system, the charge in the nervous system. It's too much. There's too much. And we're feeding it more. All the times we really want to say no, and we end up saying yes. More. Hence it comes out. So to touch into our nervous system and to release some of this charge gently, slowly, because it's a powerful thing. We don't just want to pull the door open and let it all out. Gently and slowly is the way that I offer in my practice. I just wonder, Chris, Debbie, what your thoughts are on that and how you are with your practice.
Well, the last thing actually that came to my mind was the term titration. And I think for those of you that haven't come across that word before, maybe a long time ago you did it in chemistry at school. But the term describes the way you have to work drop by drop. And essentially the basis for the process is, if you had a container of acid and a container of alkali, if you add the right amount of one to the other, you end up with water and salts, which is essentially the building block of life. But the only way to find out what that amount is to just drop one drop of acid, one drop, one drop, one drop, until eventually the substance is neutralized. And then it's also true to say that then, having done that, let's say that was 10 drops. If you took the original amount of alkali, popped 10 drops straight in, it would all still explode anyway. And I think this is where people often go wrong sometimes, in a well-meaning way, with their approach to the nervous system, is that they sort of have a sense of the end goal of what the route would be to get there, and think that they can apply the right amount of the balancing component all in one go, and it will somehow account for the history of it. Actually, that sort of drop by drop is a necessary part of the process, irrespective of how accurate the measurement is. And then as well, I think the fear sometimes that people have is that to balance the nervous system is a sort of flattening experience. That you go from being kind of frantic at the edges of your system through these kind of swinging polarities, and that to center yourself would be to move away from those energies. And the reality isn't that at all. And in fact, often the adverse is true, that people are capable of much greater degrees of bliss and joy. And there are still low and heavy periods. But what begins to change as you improve your relationship is your ability to go somewhere and then come back from it as a smooth process. Because let's face it, the nervous system often gets described as this sort of seesaw with parasympathetic on one side and sympathetic on the other. And it's almost visualized like the sympathetic nervous system is like the playground bully that just bounces really hard on the end of the swing, and you're like bouncing around, hoping that you'll calm down a bit. But without your sympathetic nervous system, like Debbie and I are on the floor now, I tried to stand up, but my sympathetic nervous system wasn't doing its job. I would just fall straight back down. It has a role in everything. And what we want to understand by meeting it is how to channel from central out to engaged in an active way, from central out to engaged in a blissful way, from what it is to engage effectively with a challenging task, whether that be a work deadline or some sort of family challenge, maybe an ill relative, for example. We want to be able to engage with those things fully, give ourselves, as is appropriate for the nervous system, to those things, but not leave lots of parts of ourselves all stuck in that experience. And then I think that idea of the shed is so good there, because it's all the detritus. In the tradition that that I teach, really, that we both teach from, we would use this analogy of digestion. And the detritus, all the stuff that builds up in the shed, I would call samskara. And samskara is a precursor to karma. But samskara literally means just a partially complete experience. It's something that's not quite done, like a meal that's undigested, and maybe there's some acid and there's some reflux. And maybe you need to absorb all the nutrition from that meal, and actually maybe you just need to pass it through the bowels. But there's something about the assimilation of it, I think, that always is important for me.
I'm not sure where I can go after we've just spoke about the bowels and passing through.
Also effectively controlled by a well-balanced nervous system.
Yes, that's true.
And that is absolutely true. I mean, it's the most basic primal part. It's our our nervous systems were formed, and we kind of formed around it. It wasn't us, and then this nervous system popped in. It's been around for millennia, and that's why it's so primal. And it's often said, our nervous systems experience stress, and so it goes into a fight and flight. And that may be, is it a saber-toothed tiger? Are we going to get eaten by the dinosaur? And such like, when actually probably now it's like, that was a really rude email I just received, and I don't really know what to do with it, but I'm really stressed, and that person just cut me up in that car, and I should have got that job, and why did she talk to me like that? It's that where we are now. But into our nervous systems, they're not deciphering whether, that's not that dangerous. The nervous system is feeling stress, and so it will immediately go into a fight and flight. Yeah. And it's protecting us. Its aim is to protect us. But what happens a lot now is that we're, as I said, we can be sitting at our laptops, or we're on our phone and we're getting really stressed and annoyed. So we're not using our fight and flight and our legs. And if it happens a lot, we can be, especially in the stressful world that we live in, we can be highly stressed a lot of the time. And that becomes our setting. And so our nervous system, as I previously said, and that's what it does in constantly, and we're not aware, or we're not always aware of it. And sometimes it takes the straw to break our our back, not the camel. And it can be the person who moves our favorite cup from one side of the room to the other, or where's my keys? It's nothing to do with the cup. It's nothing to do with the keys. It's nothing to do with that person. It's that we're already here on a good day. And just the slightest takes us to that next level.
It's interesting, Andrew, because, you know, our nervous systems have evolved, and we as people have evolved over the years, the centuries. We've evolved and evolved, but then something has happened and our nervous systems have stopped evolving. They've just stopped evolving, and now we just react. So our bodies are just in that overstimulated cycle of just overreacting constantly. And it's so curious, because that complete lack of evolution that we were on, that ride that humanity were on, has just stopped. And so we need to then almost take back charge of that progression that we were making over the years, over the decades, over the centuries, and bring it back again and understand why that progression, that evolution just stopped.
I think a big part of it is that there isn't necessarily a tangible challenge for us to overcome. And so if we look a little bit more about the sort of the mechanics of how the nervous system works, it has two sort of primary modes. One, which is kind of what we think about when we think of nerves, which is threshold based. You know, is it enough for a signal to be sent? If so, yes, and then something happens. But there is an entire part of our nervous system that is sort of permanently responsive. We think about things like proprioception, awareness of space, and like you've already said, Andrew, this isn't a sense that's entirely contained within the body. We all know what it's like to walk into a room where we know someone's just had a fight. You know, even though all the facial expressions are as if everything's perfect, you know, there's something kind of prickly and tangible in the air about that. But it all exists without our system. And then I think as well, in many cases, we give our mind a little bit too much power in terms of it sort of say in the debate. But the aspect then, quite literally, our brains are just very good at ignoring the information that doesn't agree with what it thinks it knows. And so we sort of had this cross dialogue whereby we think we're more in control of the conversation than we are. There's an entire kind of subconscious factor always in the mix.
I think we became hyper protective of ourselves.
Yeah, but then because there isn't, and then but the challenge I think is that there isn't a clear narrative that the mind is able to reconcile in order to settle the things. Yeah. Whereas, like you were saying about sort of evolutionary stopping, you know, there's a point where you can say, here is a challenge, it is complete, that is now done. But so many of the challenges that we experience, and also as well, I want to say, not just the challenges, but the wonderful things that we get attached to. I think it can be easy to be misled into thinking that it's only the hard things that stress the body. You know, we all love a hot bath, for example, but that's a direct stressor for the system. Part of the appeal is because our system is able to respond, recalibrate, and in some ways it's an overmeasure, a deliberately applied overmeasure that results in what we want.
A little bit like the sea swimming. It's like
absolutely. And you know, I partake, not as much as I used to at the moment, but I partake in the sea swimming, and I call it a clean extreme. Yeah. I certainly had my experiences of the unclean extremes, but to get in the sea, particularly in lockdown, when we were being told to stay ourselves, you know, isolate, And the thought of being in the sea with the horizon and feel an extreme, my nervous system to be let free. It had been contained too much. It had been, it hadn't moved. It had seeing the same thing. It wasn't positively, beneficially stimulated. So to get into, it was the nervous system that told me to get into the sea. I could feel it. I need to get in there. And I was like, are you sure? Freezing. But my body needed it. Oh. Oof.
I remember when growing up, every Boxing Day, my grandma and my dad's mum used to always go to the coast. And I never understood it until I was maybe 15, 16. But every single Boxing Day, she'd be in there in a cossie, swimming around in like the North, like the North Yorkshire coastline. It's nothing particularly special. We were there with like rain mats and everything on the beach, not having a clue what possibly she could be getting from it. But it's a tradition that I don't know, I keep up with. We live so the beach.
And so if there's something maybe to come out of this evening or whenever this is viewed by anyone, it's about the body. And in my opinion, the body can be seen as the material that carries this around.
Mm.
And it can be forgotten and taken for granted. And so what do we do with all that stuff that's stored? What is it? And I like to view that as the stuff that happened 20, we can feel the shame of something that happened 25 years ago. That gets wrapped around the guilt of something that happened 5 years ago. That gets wrapped around the grief of this morning, the anger of yesterday, the fear of the future. All these emotions and feelings that we push down, that the mind pushes down for us to carry on, to live, to work, to converse, to cook. It's trying to help us, but it's in us. And so if we think about it, and we go, that happened in May 1982. And actually what I'd offer is sometimes all of that wrapping, how do we get into that? And I would offer that we don't need to. It's too dangerous to get into. We just find the most outside edge of it, which may be here. It's not that. It may be that. It's just felt. It's like, it's the most comfortable, uncomfortable spot of it. Because usually, sensibly, if something's uncomfortable, we leave. If it's a chair or hopefully a relationship or an environment, this is uncomfortable. I'm out of here. And what I'm offering is to touch into our nervous systems is find that comfortable, uncomfortable spot and be with it. And it may feel like, so my offer is to do that because it's in the body. That's the way the body wants to communicate. The mind wants dates and rights and wrongs, and I said, and then she said, and then they said, and I said. When all of that can just add fuel to the anxiety fire of our nervous system, when actually it may sound like all of it just is like, ah. So with my clients, I offer that we do that, and I do it together with them. And we sit in the room and my most popular one, the VOO. It meets, the offer is it meets in a really gentle, non-invasive. All of this is aimed at being really titrated. If it was a door, we don't run towards it, pull it open. This is about looking at the door, thinking about it, and how close shall I get? What's behind it? Well, that's enough. What does it feel like to be there? That's contacting your nervous system. Well, I feel a bit angry. But what does anger feel like? How do you know you're angry? Well, my neck's got hot and I can feel my shoulders. And then there's some heat going up my back. There's your nervous system. That's what it's been holding from that incident 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago, this morning, that I haven't got time to deal with, and it just stores. So it can be sat with comfortably, uncomfortably, and released gently, titratedly. And because it's so powerful, it's a sort of atomic, that the smallest release can offer an unclenching of the nervous system. I've been waiting for that, said the nervous system. And it can offer space, breath, and we can feel lighter. We can feel more expanded. And that can be a metaphor of the life that's waiting for us. A more expansive, lighter, opened, as our limbs and our thoughts, ourselves, potentially. Even for those who, for some reason, may not be as able as others, I would offer that we're holding, to make that sound, not to think about the logic of it, but just, today I've make that sound, touch your nervous system, primal, body, release. It helps. Yeah, I'll leave that.
So Andrew, we've got 5 minutes to go, and I noticed that, I think is it Marie Ann, she put up into the chat room about the body keeps the score.
Indeed.
And I think that's from my point of view. I actually walked around my garden today, and I had a little bit of help from Andrew on a couple of calls, because I had what was going on in me today that was something that was exactly like what the guys have described, and something we've tried to do with AjoiA, and creating a space where we can actually be in a place where we can actually get to a safe space, should I say, is often not the easiest thing to do. And so I mean, I'm just sharing this because it feels right to, but I had a moment of doing, Andrew saying to me, Anne, you should just concentrate and just do your seat, your feet, your seat, and your breath. And I was just thinking, no, I can't do that. I am way, way, way too wound up. And the thing was, it wasn't a matter of, I wasn't unaware that, like Marie said, that the body kept the score. Is like my body, I could feel a sense that my body had gone almost back to a time of trauma, or a time of pain, or a time of anger, almost like you learn not to put your hand in the fire once you put your hand in the fire because it's too hot. But in the case of where I was feeling like I was feeling today, it was such a primal, strong, overbearing feeling that if I didn't actually acknowledge it, I think I probably would have exploded. So I did a bit of acknowledging, like Andrew suggested, and as I said, I didn't want to do it, but I did do it, and it really helped. But I also did a bit of shouting as well as I was cutting the grass, because the lawnmower was loud. So I thought, well, no one can hear me. And so I started shouting, and my partner was in the garden as well at that moment, sort of looking across at me like, is he all right? Sort of thing. But I think tonight's been really great, and I've really enjoyed this first example of listening to your thoughts, Andrew, and obviously the guys as well. And I think that it feels like a safe space. This feels like a safe space, and I'm really grateful that people turned up. We weren't sure that anybody would turn up at all, but it's a nice start. I'm just I can just see someone else. Amanda DeLu has written in the chat, is I have MS, an illness of the nervous system. I absolutely understand and agree with what has been said on the session. I will be practicing these tips. Thank you. Well, fair play. Yeah, it's been a good thing. So Andrew, sorry, I always call him Shovel. Andrew, do you want to close this up somehow now, and we can all say goodbye and move on?
Yeah, first of all, sorry about that. First of all, what an honor. You know, I was thinking the other day, like, what do I know? What do I know? I've done this course, I've done that course. What do I know? And it was refreshing to know. I'd known hardly anything about anything. I found that really refreshing, because I think it's true, because it's just my eye. I don't know anything about it. I think really work, let alone the rest of me. But that's the adventure. And that's what we're all here, finding out about ourselves and going deeper in different ways. Yoga, music, AjoiA, you finding out about us through sound, through frequency, energy and vibration. Other people, medicines, fly out to the Amazon. Other people run, stillness. But all of us, all pioneering our way, trying to find out a little bit more about ourselves. Why? I would offer, I love a prop. That our nervous systems, that we're all finding our ways to be in harmony with our nervous system. Homeostasis, balance. So that we can have an opportunity to release what may be restricting our nervous system from being optimal. And that might be psychotherapy, might be yoga, might be music, sound, whatever. But what's truly benefiting us, so that our nervous system, we can release what's containing us and holding us too much. And bit by bit, titratedly, it releases, and our nervous system finds a space within us to expand and breathe and glow. And that's why. So again, for those, this is the hard sell. For those who can, May the 13th, May the 14th, Saturday and Sunday, YogaTherapies studio, Oosburn, Newcastle. Trains, planes and automobiles, my friends. It's well worth it. But until then, I'm sure this is the first of, I'm going to say many. And we don't know what one's next and what we're going to talk about and when it will be. But again, massively grateful that you've taken the time out of your lives to come and sit with us for a time, whether you're here right now or you're watching, listening to this later on. Much respect, much gratitude from my ancestor behind me as well. Always the one love. So we're in harmony, we're in peace, and lots of gratitude. Thank you so much.